Welcome to Put the Metal On. My name is Dave Cullen. We're once again back for another metal music review. This time we'll be talking about the second album from the Halo Effect, March of the Unheard, that was released on the 10th of January this year, following their debut album, Days of a Lost, released 3 years ago now. So before we get to the record itself, let's talk about a bit of a background of the Halo Effect itself. So for those who don't know, the Halo Effect consists of former members of In Flames from Gothenburg in Sweden, like Jasper Stonbland, Nicholas Engelin, Peter Iwers, and Daniel Svensson, as well as Dark Tranquillity vocalist Mikael Stanne. Now on paper, this presents itself as a melodeath supergroup, almost like a reunion of guys that really helped shape the Gothenburg metal scene in the 1990s. So because of this, it came in with a lot of hype, because, In Flames and Dark Tranquillity are huge bands in Sweden. But it also creates a very built-in problem as a result. Some people were thinking, okay, are they going to push the genre forward here, or are they just going to cash in on all nostalgia for the old In Flames sounds? As I said, most of the members are from In Flames. Certainly, they positioned themselves to return to the classic Gothenburg style, which you could say is both their biggest strength, but also their biggest limitation as well. The question is, are they attempting to be relevant in modern metal, or it's just a way for old school fans to cope with In Flames' revolution in a mainstream friendly act? And we got our first taste of that by their 2022 record, Days of the Lost. And while it was incredibly well received and it delivered exactly what was expected, a very polished melodic metal record, it wasn't anything groundbreaking, unfortunately. The biggest issue with that record, I'm not going to get into it too much, but certainly Days of the Lost proved that while they can still write it, they can't evolve it, at least not yet. So for me, it puts them in a weird spot going into this record. They weren't a new band struggling with recognition per se, but they weren't a dominant force in shaping the genre either. So for me, there was two challenges going into this record, March of the Unheard. One, could they escape the nostalgia band label? In the end of the day, their appeal is built on reviving the old school Gothenburg sounds. So in the end of the day, was this their second chance to be doing the old In Flames style right, or is it a chance for them to forge their own sounds? And that brings me to the second question: can this make this new record actually stand out? As I said, Days of Lost, very good record, but it wasn't genre defining. For me, this was a record that was an opportunity to prove that they can step up their game for the sake of their longevity. They have all the talent in the world. They're all exceptional musicians. But they don't just want to make another just solid melodeath record, do they? Well, let's find out. Number one, composition and cohesion. Well, overall, it's structured very well to maintain the interest. I think there's a very predictable sequence to it as well, which is a very harsh thing to say, but let me explain. So tracks like Conspire to Deceive or Detonate, they set a very high energy tone, while the interludes like This Curse of Silence, for example, provide moments of reflection that assure more of a balanced progression, and that's good. At the same time, the pacing feels very formulatic. So it's an aggressive opener, followed by a mid-tempo build, followed by an atmospheric breather, and then repeats. So it feels like the structure is functional. It doesn't elevate the album as much as it should, but at the same time it works. There's no question that the Halo Effect can definitely write melodeath records, but that is also the problem. It feels like a melodeath record by numbers. The songwriting simply sticks to its established formulas, and while there is tracks like Beyond Directions with its orchestral touches that really break its mold, by the time you get to the second half of the records, it all blends out to me. They do have some good interludes in this record, like The Curse of Silence, which do serve a purpose, but at the same time, it doesn't introduce a new mood or theme. I really don't understand the point of an instrumental that is just in there for the middle of it. It just feels like filler as a result of it, which is a shame because it's actually really good. Meanwhile, Colder, their closer, is very atmospheric. Whilst it isn't the strongest ending, it kind of leaves their album with like a whisper rather than a bang, which is interesting. I mean, I would have liked it with a bang personally, but I can see what they're trying to go for. Overall, the runtime is fine. It's a 44-minute record. It doesn't overstay its welcome at all. But again, the midsection drags into too much similar tempos and chord progressions. It feels like every song after a while is, I hate to say it, more or less the same. If it was a bit more tighter and some of the extra fat was trimmed, I think it could have had more impact, if I'm being brutally honest. Number two, songwriting and arrangement. Now, while they have their strong songs like Detonate or Conspire to Deceive, which really have some strong riffs and hooks in there, there's very few songs beyond that that leave a lasting impression, which for me is the biggest issue with this record. There's really a lack of truly standout moments, really. And while the band definitely demonstrates some solid craftsmanship, there's very good dynamic elements, like with the acoustic intros and the orchestral arrangements I mentioned earlier. Again, it's nothing you've heard before. The songs follow, for the most part, the classic verse chorus breakdown structure, which, don't get me wrong, while executed with phenomenal finesse, it doesn't push any creative boundaries at all, really. It actually gets to the point that, as I said to you, when you're halfway through the album, you can almost predict how the next song will be structured. There's very little to be surprised by. The album, for the most part, aims for both aggression and a melancholy, but because it doesn't often land in a safe middle ground either, and as a result of it, neither of those emotions really take a solid hold for me. As for the lyrics, it treads familiar ground. I mean, introspective, struggle, overcoming adversity, but they don't dig enough to make it truly compelling for me. For the most part, it feels very generic, and don't get me wrong, Mikael Stanne is an exceptional vocalist. His delivery can't fully mask some of the uninspiring writing here for me. And that brings us on very nicely to our next part, the performance and musicianship. The biggest relief about reviewing these records is that, so far anyway, I don't have to call anyone out on their performance because everyone's outstanding. These guys are no exception. In fact, this is probably the most confidence played records I've heard so far, in that it's incredibly technically proficient. But again, it's like most records I've heard already so far, it lacks that risk taking. The guitar work, for example, is excellent. And while it doesn't really surprise, the way they harmonize the leads and the riffs is something to admire. And as I said, because they play with such precision, again, it just feels too safe as a result of that. And because of that, I just feel there's such a lack of energy. When you're playing too safe, where is the energy they're going to come from? Unless it comes from really deep within that we don't understand where it's coming from, I just can't understand that. Let's put it this way. It's like they're playing death metal correctly rather than passionately, if that makes sense. For example, Mikael Stanne, great example. As expected with his vocals, particularly his harsh ones, his cleans, though, are missing that conviction, which brings me to what I'm trying to say. It's done correctly, but not passionately. And I just think that's disappointing, especially given his history. Like, I feel if he had more of emotional connection on his clean stuff, it would be amazing. And it's not in this record. The drumming of Daniel Svensson, again, did his job, but nothing shines here for me. It simply is consistent and leaning on familiar patterns. Overall, the rhythm section lacks that wow feeling for me. And that could have really been the difference of the songs being elevated and not being elevated for me. Point number 4, the production and sound quality. Is there such a thing as a record being too clean for its own good? Again, everything is mixed very well, and that's the problem. There's nothing that I've reviewed so far that has a bad mix. It's just missing something. And in this case, it's missing that grit and the organic feel. The guitars, for example, again, technically excellent and are very clear, but you don't carry that weight or that bite, especially for those heavy moments. The bass sits well, very warm undercurrents to it, for example, but it doesn't command my attention at all. And again, you need a bass for depth. I don't know how many people I have to tell that to. The drums, for the most part, sound good, they're punching clear, but they sound like they're almost too mechanical in some cases. The kick, for example, feels lifeless at times. I feel overall the mixing, for the most part for Stein's vocals, was well balanced, but there's inconsistent moments. There's 1 or 2 moments when I felt his voice was more on top of the music rather than blending in with it, like it should. The effects, I think, could have been an opportunity they could have used for this record because there was orchestration and synths that were used there that were never fully intrigued and a bit underdeveloped. I feel if there was a little more risk with that, particularly with the atmosphere, it could have helped distinguish this album as well. Number 5, the creativity and originality. This is the sad part for almost every album I review because there's so many so far that, could have been but didn't. In the Halo Effects case, their musicians are legendary and they pay homage to the Gothenburg metal style exceptionally well. There's no question about that. The problem is, instead of curving a new path, they're going down the same roads again. I mean, let's put it this way. If you've heard early music from In Flames or Dark Tranquillity and their prime, you've essentially already heard this record, if you ask me. And while it has the benefit of the nostalgia and the excitement of a supergroup, it doesn't feel like it's trending on the same grounds to move forward. I mean, it depends what you look for. If you want something that sticks to the regular melodic death metal framework, this is your record. But if you're looking for something for innovation, this is a letdown for me. Which brings me on to the replay value and the impact of this record. I really enjoyed listening to this first time, but after second and third time, it faded very quickly for me. I mean, once you're absorbed in their melodies and riffs, you can't help but feel nostalgic about their past work. And if you're an In Flames and Dark Tranquillity fan, this is for you, big time. And as I said, while Detonate and Conspire to Deceive are by far their best songs in the records, neither of them, I feel, are a defining anthem. It blends too much together, and making the individual songs, unfortunately, stick less in the long run. As I said, just to conclude, March of the Unheard will satisfy long-term fans. If you're a big fan of Gothenburg metal, this is definitely a record, but it's not going to shake up the genre in any way, shape, or form. Certainly not meaningful enough. I mean, it's well executed. It's like every other record so far. It's well executed, but it's almost like a passion project rather than the groundbreaking statements. I just wish I was more. Am I selfish in asking that? And that's another review, folks. What do you think yourself of this record? In fact, of all good reviews, what have you thought of my comments, or what are your own opinions of it? Please leave a comment on the videos below if you to give us your 2 cents on the record. What did you think? Do you think this is too nostalgic, or do you think this lacks innovation, or do you have a different opinion? Please let us know. I'll be curious to hear your perspective. Once again, guys, if you liked the video, please give it a like, and if you'd like to follow our future videos, give us a subscribe. We'll be back very soon with some more reviews. Thank you, as always, for watching, but until then, I've been Dave Cullen, and this has been Put the Metal On. Stay safe, enjoy the metal.